Hello, we ghosties! I'm Chance Lee.
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
And this is That's So Gothic, a movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses. Today we are playing cultural anthropologist / white savior and trying not to get gutted by Candyman.
Have you ever heard of Candyman? If you look in the mirror, you say his name 5 times.
In cities everywhere,
Candyman?
they whisper his name.
Right. Candyman.
It's just a story,
Candyman?
Candyman.
just a ghost story.
Candyman.
An entire community starts attributing the daily horrors of their lives to a mythical figure.
The legend first appeared in 1890. He was attacked, mutilated, and burned to death. Poor Candyman.
Helen, a woman died in there. Leave it.
Everyone knows he isn't real.
That's modern oral folklore.
Everyone. Except Helen Lyle.
Bernadette. It ain't safe around here. I don't scare too easy. Wanna know about Ruthie Jean? They ain't never gonna catch him. Who? Candyman.
Who is that?
I came for you.
Do I know you?
Now she is about to discover
Helen? Get out! Get out!
what's behind the mystery.
I'm sick.
What's behind the legend.
Listen, he's under the bed!
And most terrifying of all,
Come with me.
what's behind the mirror.
He's here.
Candyman. You don't have to believe. Just beware.
Released in 1992, 30 years ago, in October, Candyman was directed by Bernard Rose, who also adapted the screenplay from Clive Barker's short story, The Forbidden. It stars Virginia Madsen as Helen Lyle, Tony Todd as Candyman, and Casey Lemmons, who was Clarice's roommate in Silence of the Lambs. She also directed Eve's Bayou and Harriet. She plays Bernadette,
I didn't know that.
Helen's friend.
Wow.
This is the story of a grad student investigating an urban legend that becomes real. So this movie has a 78% critical tomato and 62% audience tomato, which was surprising.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert himself reviewed Candyman, gave it 3 stars.
Wow.
He says that elements of the plot may not hold up in the clear light of day. I think he's talking about, especially near the end, where you're like, is she killing people?
Yeah.
Is Candyman killing people? He says that didn't bother him much, and what he liked was a horror movie that scared him with ideas and gore instead of just gore.
Oh.
And I think that's also what I like about this movie.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to put it.
Yeah, and we'll come back to its ideas frequently in this discussion about this movie, which came out a few months after the LA riots, which happened in April of 1992. So this movie was not as big of a blockbuster success as I would have thought.
Really?
So it had a budget. It was hard to determine what the budget was, between 6 to 8 million, and it made only 26 million worldwide.
Okay.
So it doesn't seem great. But it was 1992, and it was enough to spawn a theatrical sequel,
Yep.
a direct-to-video third installment
Yep.
starring Baywatch babe Donna D'Errico.
Oh.
Justice for Donna D'Errico, she's great in that. and the 2021?
I think so, yeah.
2021, it was supposed to be 2020, but delayed from COVID.
Yep.
Candyman reboot / sequel.
Yeah.
That was directed by Nia DaCosta.
Mm-hmm.
So... Speaking of directors, Bernard Rose did like one other movie before this, which I had never heard of. So I watched this movie. I've seen this movie a lot, but I watched it with some commentary for the first time. And all of the actors talk about what an incredible and talented director Bernard Rose is. And I've heard of none of his movies. He did a movie in 1988 called Paper House.
Okay.
1990, Chicago Joe and the Showgirl, which sounds kind of familiar. It has Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, okay.
Talk about a horror film. I do not like him. Candyman. And then I don't recognize a single title. Really? He's still directing.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm so 2019. It just says on Wikipedia Samurai Marathon, and then under notes it says Japanese film.
Okay.
Sure. Yep. Good for you, Bernard.
All right.
We'll talk more. So the commentary revealed a lot about his directing style, which is very unique.
Okay.
And some of the things that went on behind the scenes of this movie, which is very fascinating.
Yeah.
So the screenplay is also very important. So although Clive Barker invented the Candyman with this story, it was set in Liverpool, where the Beatles are from, right? Isn't that the Beatles Liverpool?
Sure.
I'm not a Beatles fan.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're kind of not relevant anymore.
Right.
Complete side story. Well, I hatched a baby chick recently named Yoko Ono.
I love that name.
And one of my volunteers, I was like, do you know who Yoko Ono is? And she said, no. And I said, have you heard of the Beatles? And she goes, I just listen to K-pop. I said, you're not missing out.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Fine.
Oh,
times change.
God bless the next generation.
I spent most of my childhood listening to the same things my parents did.
Yes.
So I'm glad things are moving along.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was very British, obviously. And this movie is set in Chicago in an urban housing development. So a lot of the Candyman legend, which is not real, was created by this movie and by Bernard Rose. And one of the interesting things, he was inspired a lot by Bloody Mary. Where you say Bloody Mary 13 times into the mirror. Yeah. Have you ever done anything like that before?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did anything happen?
No. I remember one time playing in a Ouija board at a sleepover, and we were convinced that it was like a wind from the chimney came through. And we were like, oh my God, that's it. It's a ghost. It wasn't. It happens all the time. But no, I've never had anything spooky like that happen. Yeah, how about you?
I have these memories that must be fake.
Yeah.
Because I have a memory of using a Ouija board to summon Elvis, and then the little planchette moving on its own. Yeah, yeah. Which it could not have happened.
It never does, yeah.
But it's so burned into my memory of it moving across the floor.
Yeah.
And then I do remember saying Bloody Mary in my grandmother's bathroom, and then a shadow passed by the window. But it was probably just somebody walking down the alleyway, but it really scared us. So I guess in
it was Elvis.
Oh, it was Elvis! Oh,
it was him and his blue suede shoes.
Ghost of Elvis. Yeah. So I guess in the original script, they were having them say Candyman 13 times. Like Bloody Mary, and they realized,
oh my God,
by the time they got to 7, they were like, oh my God,
so much.
So they cut it down to 5.
Yeah.
So one thing that must be said is that all of the creators of this movie are white.
Yes.
And we are also white.
Yes, we are.
So we're white people talking about this movie. It's very interesting. I think this takes, especially for 1992, a very modern view of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it does have some maybe unforeseen problematic elements, but overall I think it was both well intentioned and well executed. Yes. But I did want to find some Black scholarship on Candyman. So I found an interview on The Root that they did before the new movie came out last year, but they were asking 5 different Black writers and scholars about the original Candyman. And Rebecca Wanzo, who is a Washington University professor, had a really good quote where she says that the original Candyman is an important horror film in Black cultural imagination and touches on issues like anti-Black violence, gentrification, and the vulnerability of Black people in public housing. That said, the centrality of white femininity in the film and its sequels, both as object of desire and central protagonist in rectifying harms against Black people, make it a bit discordant.
Yes.
And there was another really good quote here from John Jennings, who is a UC Riverside professor. And he says that Candyman represents both the seemingly endless projection of monstrosity and negativity onto black men, and also represents the rage of the black community when racialized violence occurs. He is both monster and hero. I think that quote is very appropriate for the sequel as well, which we've both seen, but we're not talking about today.
Right.
But keep that in mind as we go through. So let's dive in. We open with a really impressive aerial shot of Chicago.
Yeah.
And on the commentary, they said this was the first time the camera had been mounted, a movie camera had been mounted to a helicopter in this way.
Really?
For the shot.
Oh,
so they got their money's worth out of it. We get some shots of like bees and stuff, bees flying over the city. And then we cut to Helen. Helen Lyle, Virginia Madsen, gorgeous woman.
I mean, probably the most beautiful woman in the world.
Have you seen the David Lynch Dune?
No, is she in that?
So she is,
Yeah.
and everyone hates this movie.
Right.
And I remember turning on Dune, and the first shot is just Virginia Madsen's face.
Yeah.
You know how Star Wars has the crawl?
Right.
They decide to just like glow up Virginia Madsen and have her tell you what Dune is about.
I love that.
I turn that on, I go, Dune, best movie ever. And then
it should have just been that.
Just have Virginia Madsen read me the book.
Yeah.
Because as soon as she disappeared, I'm like, this is garbage. I do not like it. But yeah, so she's gorgeous. She's just smoking and beautiful. And so she's interviewing someone about urban legends.
Yes.
And this person tells her about a babysitter canoodling and then saying Candyman 5 times in the mirror. And then he kills her and kills the baby.
Yeah.
And so we also meet her Helen's friend and research partner, Bernadette, who's played by Casey Lemmons. They're working on this project together. They're grad students. Helen asks the black janitor about the Candyman myth. She goes into the microfilm. We love us some microfilm.
Love a microfilm.
Researching all these different murders in Chicago. We see a lot of her typing on CRT monitors from the 90s. They're just blue with white text. And so she learns about the housing projects and the architecture of these buildings through her research. And she realizes that even though she lives in this gorgeous loft apartment with, 12-foot high ceilings, 15 foot. These ceilings are huge.
Like in a whole wall of windows. Gorgeous.
Yes, she has this gorgeous apartment. But she learns that these buildings are basically the same construction format as the housing projects in Chicago. And to show Bernadette this, they go into the bathroom and they take the medicine cabinet off the wall and they push the other one through.
Yeah.
And that apartment is vacant in there. And this is like an explanation of this Candyman myth.
Yeah.
Where like they say Candyman 5 times, but it's actually a real person coming through the
whole
mirror.
wall. Yeah.
And I think that's based on a real murder. I think that element actually happened where someone came through a neighboring apartment and killed someone. So they want to go to the Cabrini Green housing project. Which will be our house for this movie. A very unique one.
Yes.
And it's the kind of the symbol of what we think of as the modern ghetto.
Yeah.
It's a real place, which I don't think I realized the first time I saw this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Had you seen this movie before? We didn't.
Yes, I watched it before I saw the new one.
Okay.
I think that might have been my first time I saw it. Maybe I saw it a long time ago.
Okay.
But so the first time, or at least the first I can remember time I watched it was fairly recently.
Okay.
And then I rewatched it for this. So I do think I knew it was like a real place. I think I remember hearing that because I watched some like video essays on it and stuff before.
Okay.
But I did know a little bit about it before I went into the movie.
Well, I saw this movie in 2014 or 2015 for the first time. I knew nothing about any of this because it got torn down in 2011. Oh. We'll talk more about that later, but they actually did a lot of filming there in 1992, especially with all the exterior and stair climbing shots were there. So yeah, they go to this. So it was built to be affordable housing.
Yep.
And then they built it cheaply.
Yep.
They kind of crammed people in there. Crime escalated. The police didn't want to monitor it. So it became this terrible symbol of like black on black crime.
Yes.
All sorts of sides are using it for different political motivations. Right. So anyway, Helen and Bernadette show up there. There are these kids with like neon purple and blue, like color block windbreakers on.
Yeah.
And every inch of this place is covered in graffiti.
Yes.
Every inch of this place is covered in graffiti. And we see the iconic sweets to the sweet. We'll see that a few times. It's emblazoned on the hallway.
Yeah.
But the boys are harassing these women as they're going up.
They think they're cops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because why else would this white lady be there with a black friend?
Yes.
Like, it all seems a little too suspicious.
Yeah.
And it looks like, I mean, from my ignorant perspective, an abandoned building, but people are living there.
Yeah,
there are people there.
Yep.
And they're also going in. Helen's taking pictures.
Yeah.
It's a little outsidery, like anthropological.
What's the word? Something tourists people like to use, like poverty tourist.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that is kind of what it. Like, her heart's in the right place, but I don't think she realizes how this is coming across.
Exactly.
And again, even for 1992, I do think they're acknowledging that in a way.
I think they are.
Even if the overall, that writer said the centrality of her will become problematic later. But they find this bathroom. They're able to do the thing where they push the medicine cabinet through.
Yep.
And she crawls through there. But the other side is this mural of Candyman's face.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
I want that in my house.
Oh my God. She crawls through what's his mouth, basically.
And she doesn't know she's doing it because it's on the side she's like crawling into. Oh, it's such a good shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's candy in there that has like razor blades in it. And then she looks into the eyes of the mural.
Yeah.
You can tell she starts to feel a little weird.
Yes.
She starts rubbing her own eyes and looking a little dazed. I do like when she scares Bernadette. She pops back through the mirror because her poor friend is just like waiting for her. Does not want her to be doing this at all. And so they get interrupted by a neighbor who wants to know what they're doing. Her name's Anne Marie.
Yep.
And she is played by Vanessa Williams, but not that Vanessa Williams. I think she goes by, maybe they might force her to be Vanessa A. Williams or something like that. So she's played by someone named Vanessa Williams. And Helen asks her if she'll be interviewed. So she does agree to be interviewed. And the contrast is so interesting. They go into her apartment. Yep. And it's got these cute pink walls. Yeah. Very domestic. Yep. She has a little baby Anthony, very cute.
Yeah. But she does have the big, I think it's a pit bull or something.
She has a big scary dog.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so she, knows where she lives.
Yep.
But they talk to her for a little bit. And then then Helen has to go to dinner with her husband. And this awful long-haired academic.
Neckbeard.
This movie very accurately captures the horror of being stuck talking to an academic know-it-all.
Yes, I will say that is probably the most horrifying scene of the movie.
Yes.
Awful.
This guy talks to her like she's some dumb woman.
Yep.
He knows everything about the Candyman legend. And he kind of sounds like that.
Yeah.
So he tells her the story of the Candyman legend. Yeah. He was a free black man who was an artist, but made the mistake falling in love with a white woman. Yep. So the white mob took him, cut off his hand because he was an artist. That's what he used. And then they covered him in honey. Yep. And he got stung to death with bees.
Yes.
And thus the Candyman was born. Side note, they bring this guy back in the sequel.
Oh, did they?
And kill him in the opening segment.
I wasn't going to watch the sequel, but now I have to.
The sequels are worth watching.
Oh, okay.
And I do think we might be able to talk about the second one.
Oh, okay.
The second one's set in New Orleans for some reason. Oh. And very southern. We could do a Southern Gothic series.
Oh, that's fun.
And while he's talking, we just get this slow zoom on Virginia Madsen with her cigarette.
Yes. She's looking very posh.
Gorgeous.
Probably not eating anything, just having a cigarette for dinner.
This movie makes me want... I'm not a smoker, but I want to.
She just looks so elegant
She
doing
looks
it.
so good. I just want to smoke like Virginia Madsen.
Right.
So they... Let's see. So she goes back to Cabrini Green to... I guess talk to Anne Marie again. And she gets interrupted by this child. He's very funny.
Yeah.
And he is telling her about this time Candyman like cut a boy's wiener off in the bathroom.
Yeah. Which like I didn't realize that's what was happening when I like first watched it. And then it like sunk in for me and I was like, oh, that is way more horrifying than I thought he was just, I don't know, nicking him in the leg or something. Like, I was like, oh.
I don't know if I would know, but when I was in, like, this movie came out when I was either in, like, late elementary school or early middle school. And a kid in my class who maybe kind of looked like this boy had seen it and was telling me about Candyman. And I remember him saying that Candyman cut a boy's penis off. That was the thing that horrified him the most.
Yeah.
And that just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Probably until I saw this for like 20 years. I'm like, is there going to be a scene where Candyman like cut somebody's dick off? Like, is that what's going to happen? Kind of. We only see the aftermath of it. And so Helen goes into this like, I don't know why it's there because it's like an apartment complex, but it looks like a public bus station bathroom.
Yeah, it's like it's its own little bathroom. And I was actually watching, it was actually a TikTok recently about sort of a similar building in New York. It wasn't talking about Cabrini Green at all, but it was talking about a similar type of building in New York City. Okay. And apparently it was something like in the 1920s, 1910s or something, was when they made it law, at least there, that there had to be at least one bathroom for every, like, 40 people or something.
Oh, wow.
So I wonder if it was sort of a similar deal where it was like, so the woman who they're interviewing, I think she has her own bathroom, right? There's a scene with her own bathroom.
Yeah.
So there are bathrooms definitely in at least some of the rooms. I wonder if not all of them have it, and that's why they need.
Or I wonder if it's like, because like in my apartment building and sometimes there's like bathrooms in the apartment, like it's in the building proper. Like in the lobby so maybe this is the way they used to do it, where it's just like there for visitors, or if you're doing like a block party or something.
Yeah.
Or if you're having a giant bonfire of trash.
Yeah.
Which they do in this one.
Yeah,
maybe that's why.
They need spare bathrums.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, look, you know what it reminds me of is like a beach bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It really does.
You're coming to lounge out by Cabrini Green.
Yes.
You need your beach bathrooms.
You just rinse off.
Yeah.
But this one, it's like they've done Sweets to the Sweet in there, but is it poop?
Oh, what she sees?
Yeah, like it says Sweets to the Sweet on the stall, but she's complaining, she's holding her nose.
Oh, yeah.
It's stinky, there's flies everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it shit? Is someone written it in shit on the wall?
I thought it was blood.
Oh.
I thought that was
maybe it's dry blood.
Yeah.
It's a human excretion.
Yeah.
And so there's an arrow pointing to the toilet.
Yes.
So she opens the door. It's filled with bees. But then a gang comes in. There's one of the gang members has a hook.
Yep.
And I guess, do we know Candyman has a hook yet? Did they give him a hook in the legend?
I think we knew he had a hook at this point.
Okay.
And he says that he's Candyman.
Okay. Yeah. And so they knock her out.
Oh, yeah.
Really brutally, actually.
Yeah.
Her eye is really swollen shut. It looks like a grape.
She still looks beautiful.
She still looks like
She looks gorgeous.
It heals very quickly.
It does.
Heals very quickly. She reports them to the police and then like has to go home and make dinner for her husband. It's just like, oh my God. And so she's dating a professor.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting dynamic because she's a grad student.
Yeah.
And do we understand how they met? Like,
I don't think so.
Okay.
But they definitely work at least, well, does she work at the school
she's
too?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Grad students usually do, work at the same school. So she's employed by and a student at the same school where her husband is a professor.
As a professor, yeah. Yes. So I would assume that's how they met, but who knows? Maybe they met before then, and she gets lowered tuition because she's married to him.
Maybe.
So
that's true.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Try to give him a little benefit of the doubt.
They're in a weird relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I was watching this with the commentary, but I didn't pick up on that for a while, and I didn't remember that part. So she gets these. She had been taking the photos
Yep.
at Cabrini Green, 1992. So she has to get the film developed. They give her little slides
Yep.
of the
Of
film,
course.
which is really fun.
The negatives,
So
yeah.
she's looking at the slides in like a parking garage, but then Candyman shows up.
Yes.
He appears to her in his pimp coat.
Yes.
He's got this fur coat on.
Gorgeous.
And so she goes into this trance.
Yeah.
Helen goes into this trance. And in the commentary, Virginia Madsen talks about how they would actually hypnotize her on the set of this movie whenever she would go into a trance.
Wow.
And Virginia Madsen says, quote, "A psychic told me to never be hypnotized." Which is, there's just so much going on in that one sentence.
Oh my god.
But she decides to do it anyway, and
Yeah.
that's why she has that glassy look whenever they do it, is because they would actually hypnotize her.
Thought she was just an
And
amazing
then
actress.
They would have to then lead her onto set.
Wow.
And she got to where she'd have blackouts and would not remember what was happening.
so wild.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever been hypnotized?
No, but I did witness it at my
Okay.
high school graduation. You know, we had like a grad night kind of thing, like a party afterwards, and they brought hypnotists who came, and they did it to my best friend Jessica.
Oh.
And I didn't believe. I mean, I didn't believe in it, and you know, I don't believe in it in like a supernatural sense, but yeah, absolutely, it's something people can do.
Right.
Because I watched like 12 people I graduated with just do the most random, you know, shit that I know they weren't coached on before.
Yeah.
So it really is so much fun to watch and so interesting. I've never been hypnotized though.
No,
Have you?
I'd be curious.
Yeah, I want to try it at least once.
We got to get hypnotized.
Yeah,
Any
we'll do it on the
hypnotists
podcast.
any hypnotists are listening right in.
Please, yeah.
So she would actually be hypnotized and put into this trance. So in the movie, she wakes up. Mm-hmm. And she's on the floor. Yeah. She's covered in blood.
Yeah.
Covered in blood.
Yeah.
And we see poor Anne-Marie's dog's head.
Decapitated.
The head is on the floor.
It's been decapitated.
The baby crib, poor baby Anthony's crib, is filled with blood.
Yep. And so I'm sorry, what was her name? Anne-Marie?
Anne-Marie.
She's holding the side of the crib, just like thrashing. Like there's like no other, she's just throwing her head back, screaming. It's incredible.
Yeah, because she must have just walked in on this and seen this. Her dog is dead.
Yep.
And the interesting thing, though, there's no baby body.
No.
There's just blood.
She doesn't actually know if the baby's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And Helen, meanwhile, has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
She's woken
She
up covered
literally
in
just woke
blood
up.
and there's a dog head. So she grabs a knife.
Yeah.
She comes out of the bedroom covered in blood with a knife.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie sees her, attacks her.
Yep.
Helen
Rightfully.
cuts her in self-defense.
Yep.
They're both defending themselves. The police show up as Helen is like on top of Anne-Marie with a knife covered in blood. They obviously arrest her. She gets strip searched and interviewed at the hospital police station. She calls home. Husband, not home.
Yeah, doesn't pick up.
We see the phone ring
Yep.
and we see the empty apartment.
Yeah.
That's a key. And then she has to spend the night in jail. But while she's in jail, she has a vision of baby Anthony in the Candyman room at Cabrini Green. So she gets released on bail. Her husband does show up. And she says, "Where were you?" And he says, "I was sleeping." But we know that's not true. We know that's not true. So he's gone. And then she draws her gorgeous giant curtains.
Yes.
She closes the windows. She gets out a slide projector and starts doing the slides. And then in one of the pictures she's taken of herself in the mirror, she sees Candyman behind her. And then he does appear behind her. And he says, "Helen, be mine."
Yes.
And he chases her around the apartment.
Yeah. Amazing voice.
He does it. Tony Todd has a great voice.
Great voice.
I don't know what else he's done.
Yeah.
But he will always
Does
be
he
Candyman.
narrate books? He should.
He should.
He should narrate books.
He loves being Candyman, too.
Oh, really?
From the commentary. I don't know when they recorded this commentary.
Yeah.
You can tell he loves being Candyman.
Really? Yeah. I think this is like a very well-known piece of trivia, but I guess they actually put bees in his mouth. Have you
Yes.
heard this? Yeah, and then for everyone that stung him, I think he got like $1,000 or something.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he probably liked the paycheck a lot because I think he got stung a whole bunch.
Probably.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about, there's an alternate ending to this movie that remind me to talk about. It
Okay.
involves more bees.
Ooh.
And Virginia Madsen, who is allergic to bees.
Oh, no.
Yes. So he says to her that her death will be a tale that is told to frighten children.
Yes.
Which they bring that back in the sequel, which
Oh,
I
okay.
found really interesting. So Helen gets cut by Candyman. Bernadette shows up to like see her friend.
Yep.
Unfortunately, she gets hypnotized and killed.
Yep.
And then husband comes in, finds Helen with a knife again.
Yep.
And Bernadette's gutted on the floor.
Ugh, so bad.
So gross.
Yep.
She gets handcuffed and taken to jail again.
Yep.
Or like a mental hospital
Yeah.
maybe, because she's strapped to a bed.
Yes.
She has another vision of baby Anthony.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so she's strapped in this bed and like Candyman floats down from the ceiling.
Right, like
above
perpendicular
her.
to
Yes.
her. Really good. Yeah.
That's a great shot. She gets wheeled into the doctor's office, the head psychiatrist at this mental hospital. And so while Candyman's floating above her, she's screaming at him and stuff. And so he shows her the security cam footage, which of course Candyman does not appear on.
Yes.
So she looks crazy.
Yeah. There's like a big time jump, isn't there, while she's in the hospital? I think
There's a lot of time passing in this
Yeah.
movie because, again, she's fully healed from also
Yes.
being like brutally attacked.
Right. I think he says something like, you've been in here for like 3 months. Like, it's a
wow.
long time, I feel like.
Okay. I'm
Maybe-
glad you mentioned that because the commentary disguised a lot of the stuff and I
Yeah.
don't remember as many details.
I feel
as
like
I used
a
to.
lot of time passed and being really... but she doesn't like remember any of it. She's like,
Okay.
holy shit, it's been this long.
That makes sense considering what's going to happen with her husband
Yeah.
as well. So she looks in the mirror. She says Candyman 5 times.
Yep.
And Candyman appears and kills the doctor.
Yeah,
And
that's a good scene.
I mean, you know she's going to get blamed for this
Yeah.
too. And Candyman frees her though. So she's like strapped to the chair.
Yep.
And I think, you know, one of the things you're supposed to think about this movie is she actually doing it?
Right.
Or is Candyman doing it?
Yeah.
But like, there's no way she could have freed herself.
Right. Yeah, it's so hard because, yeah, I don't think she could have done it, but I want to believe that she is, like, she is actually, like, I believe that she's seeing Candyman,
Yeah,
like,
for
I
sure.
am, yeah, but, like, I like the idea of her, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of Bonnie and Clyde moment,
Yes.
where he's, you know, doing some of them, but
Yes.
I like to think that she is holding the knife for some, like, of the, you know, the things that happened before.
Oh yeah.
So-
And she definitely is by the end.
Yeah.
So she gets freed. I like when she attacks that nurse.
Yes! She just kind of jumps on her.
She sidles across the balcony.
Yep.
Like the window ledge.
Yeah.
And like she knocks on the window.
Yeah.
And the nurse just opens
She's
it.
like, oh,
which
no.
I guess I would too if there was, I don't know. I mean, if you
But, like, also, there are, like, alarms going off or, like, people freaking out.
Yeah, that's
like, you
true.
can hear, like, the people in the background running, like, ah!
Yeah.
And then this nurse who just sees the woman at the window, and I don't think I would let her in at that point, because I'd be like, there's chaos happening.
Yes.
Now there's a woman out here. What is happening? Like,
she just opens the window, then Helen just pounces on her.
and knocks her out.
Knocks her
Enough
out.
that she can undress her. Yeah.
She takes her clothes, and then there's this catatonic patient in bed just watching them. It's so funny. In a movie that's not usually that comical.
Yeah.
So poor Helen gets home,
Yep.
and her whole apartment's being repainted.
Oh, the worst color.
It's this ugly, what did you call it?
Pepto-Bismol pink.
It's gross.
It's like a dusty pink.
It's not puce, it's like a gross pink.
It's a gross pink.
And her husband's there with like this sexy grad student
Yes.
that we saw him talking to earlier. Like in one of the first scenes where we meet him, he's
Yep.
talking to her. But she sees Helen and then just kind of like
Yeah.
crumples.
Yes.
Like the way she falls
Yeah.
is hilarious.
No bones.
But she just goes rubber chicken.
She goes no bones.
She
Yeah.
goes rubber chicken on the floor. And like, so he's redone this apartment without her.
Yep.
And so she confronts them. And when she leaves, that little bitch of a husband calls the police on
Yep.
her. So she has had these visions of baby Anthony at Cabrini Green. So she returns to Cabrini Green and goes into the Candyman lair. And he's there, like his body is there,
Yeah.
almost like a Frankenstein monster.
Right.
Or Dracula in the coffin.
Yes.
The commentary, they make a lot of allusions to the classic Universal movie monsters.
okay.
They talk about Dracula and Frankenstein and the werewolf.
Yeah.
And these monsters that are not monsters, but are made monstrous. And so they really do think of Candyman as being this entry into that like pantheon.
I could see that.
They call them the Gothic movie monsters.
Okay.
So she tries to kill Candyman, kind of like when they tried to drive the stake through Dracula or whatever. But he puts her in a trance, carries her away. He like opens up his chest, similar to Dakota Johnson at the end of Suspiria.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's filled with bees.
Yep.
He kisses Helen and the bees like transfer to her.
Yep.
And as you said, all these bees are real.
Yeah.
Which is one of the good things about pre-CG.
Yeah, the
like,
practical effects.
Dangerous, but better.
So much fun.
Because you're not like, these are obviously fake bees.
Yes.
Like they look like real bees and they look really scary. So she passes out and Candyman like carries the baby away. And we had seen this big pile of trash before, like old furniture, and they're going to have a big bonfire.
Right.
So Candyman puts the baby in the middle of this.
Yeah.
And they light it on fire, and Helen crawls in there to get the baby. So I guess the reason this happens is because in the story, which takes place in England, it's a Guy Fawkes night.
Oh, okay.
So very V for Vendetta.
Yes.
And so they do these fires and they burn the effigies and everything.
Right.
So they just worked the bonfire into this story.
Oh, interesting.
Poor Helen. She goes in there to get the baby.
Yeah.
She crawls out of there.
Yeah.
Like this gross burn makeup on.
Yeah.
All her hair is gone.
Oh, yeah.
And she saved the baby.
Yes, she did.
And the kid who was talking about the kid's penis being cut off earlier, he sees another corpse in the bonfire.
Yeah.
So perhaps it was intended to be like this Candyman trap.
Yeah.
Whether it was literal or figurative, maybe it was
Right.
a figurative cleansing.
Yes.
Because one thing I was reading up a bit about the Cabrini Green, the Real Housing Project, is the kind of like citizen activism that would take place. Like they realized that they were not going to get any help from the police or the government, and they really had to kind of like
come together.
And so this is it might have been a symbolic thing, like we're going to come together and triumph over this.
Right.
So we flash forward to help poor Helen's funeral.
Yep.
The only people in attendance are her husband and his mistress.
Yep.
But then like all of the people show up from Cabrini Green.
Goosebumps.
They come in this like train of people.
Yep.
They toss the hook in the grave.
Yeah,
and they bury
someone gave
her.
it to the little boy to do, which I thought was maybe not the best idea. But
Well, he's seen a lot, though.
that's true.
He has seen a lot.
He's seen a lot.
So they're able to put that to rest. Oh, and Anne-Marie has the baby back.
Yeah.
And so then we flash forward again. The grad student, who's now wearing this completely, like, the thinnest top you've ever seen. NFTs on display. And she's making dinner. Because this guy cannot cook for himself, clearly. Because Helen had to make his dinner,
Of
too.
course. God.
And he's, like, being a whiny little bitch.
Yeah.
And being sad about her death.
Right. Yeah. He's like having flashbacks, like of like over, seeing her cooking over his, mistress now cooking. Like it flashes back to like how nice their kitchen looked before because she's made it into this god awful tacky mess.
And he says something snide to the mistress, and she like throws the ground beef out of the fridge, like she's pissed off.
She's just trying to make hamburger helper.
Yes. And so and then for some reason he decides to say Candyman into the mirror.
Yeah.
And
no,
then,
but he doesn't. He says Helen.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Again, see the commentary.
Yeah, did it cover?
Like, what's he saying?
Oh,
yes. Okay.
He said Helen 5 times.
5 times, and then she appears behind him.
So good.
And she kills him.
Yeah.
And then the credits roll over this like painting of Helen as like a saint on fire, but it also has like a slash through it because she's become like this new urban legend.
Right.
Yeah. So do you think we missed anything with that plot summary?
No, not really. Yeah, I got nothing to add. Justice for the dog.
Oh yeah, that poor dog. Yeah. So we'll take a break. We'll come back with our Gothic recap, and we'll decide, is it Gothic? Stay tuned. All right, we ghosties, we are back with our Gothic recap. Every Gothic film has 4 qualities: a girl, a guy, a haunt, and a house. So our girl, obviously Helen. She's a good girl, I think. She's a very good main character.
I think she is. I think she's interesting. you know, we'll probably talk about it later, but she definitely has some like very white saviory type of, you know, characteristics. But I think she's a very interesting character. And obviously the actress is just the most beautiful woman of all time.
I really love her.
Do you think they named her Helen on purpose? Because when I think of Helen, I think of Helen of Troy.
Oh.
And obviously her like beauty, you know, what's the saying? Her beauty launched like 100 ships.
Yes.
But then also, you know, the war.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I think the characters in the story have the same names, the original story.
Oh,
and I could see, like, Clive Barker's very British.
He is.
British, so I could see him doing that.
Yeah, some, like, you know, Greek mythology kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah.
He's also a queer man, Clive Barker.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's one of the featurettes on the DVD. He's talking, and then just, there's no reason. They just flash up a picture of him and, like, someone who looks like a romantic partner, him and a man.
Aww.
And then they just, I'm like, why? I'm glad they showed it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what he's talking about.
Did he have any hand in casting? Because I feel like a straight man would not have cast this woman because she is so objectively beautiful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a straight man would have cast
I can't
someone
remember
sexier.
if he was a producer on this or not. He produced the sequels.
Okay, interesting.
But he was clearly involved in this because he's all over the commentaries.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, he's all over. So I bet he was a producer on this.
Yeah, I don't think a straight man picked her.
That's a very...
She's too beautiful.
She's too beautiful. She is, yes. Yeah. And she'd probably get more work if there weren't as many straight men.
Yeah, I agree.
She's not in enough.
No, she's not.
Yeah. And she's really, I can't picture anybody else playing this role. She's very good at it.
She's very good.
So yeah, I guess there's an alternate ending where poor Virginia Madsen, who is allergic to bees, had to be covered in bees. There's a scene, a shot of her like in a hive, I think, that's in the walls. And I guess they put baby bees on her. So they're just born.
Yeah.
And like they could still sting, but they're much more unlikely to.
Yeah.
And I don't think they can fly yet or
Okay.
something.
Yep.
So they put those on her.
Oh my God.
And then they'd shoot it. And then the guy would come in with like this, she said a little vacuum and suck them up, like gently suck them off of her.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really funny. Yeah. And then so she was pissed when they didn't use that because she had to go through all of that. She's been hypnoptized. She's been covered in bees.
Wow.
She went through a lot.
She did. Maybe that's why she doesn't have any other. She's like, I'm done. I'm retiring.
I know.
Yeah.
So our guy and our haunt, I think, are both Candyman.
I agree.
Yeah. So the guy is usually some sort of romantic interest.
Yep.
And the person who draws the girl into the unsafe scenario.
Yes.
And here, that's definitely Candyman.
Yeah.
She's intrigued by this legend. Virginia Madsen calls Candyman, quote, seductive in a gothic way.
Ooh.
So... I'm going to put that as a quote for our podcast, though.
Yeah.
You know, one of those misleading quotes.
Yes.
Just say, quote, seductive in a gothic way, Virginia Madsen. Don't need to know she's not talking about our podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe. Yeah.
And then, this is where the commentary talks a lot about the romance of this, which, like, I didn't really see. I could see it from Candyman's perspective.
Right.
Which in this case also sets it up as this kind of like black guy who's got a thing for the white ladies.
Right.
And then like how that can be seen as scary to people. Even though like the original, like when he was a person, it's clearly seen as just like a forbidden love because of the time.
Yes.
He's not predatory, nothing like that.
Yeah.
But then by turning him into a monster who's still kind of horny for Helen. Like, you know, and then the director talks about the eroticism of it, and how the hook is like he has, quote, a huge cock on his hand.
Not like any cock I've seen.
There's a, you know those Stephanie Plum books by Janet Ivanovich?
Oh, yeah.
Stephanie Plum teams up with Lula, who's a hoe from the streets.
Hell yeah.
And there's one quote where I forget exactly what Lula says, but she goes, I like one with a little curve in it. You know, it's like a little surprise. But this one's a big curve.
Yeah,
I mean, this is like a U-turn.
Yes, well, and also, it's sharp.
Yes.
It can't be fun.
There's some like horror movie criticism that I'm not sure I buy into
Okay.
about knives being phallic and all slasher movies being
Yeah.
sexual because of the penetration of the knife.
Yeah, I think
I
I've
don't
seen
buy
something
into
about
that.
Yeah, like I get
Sometimes a knife is a knife.
Yes, that's a great quote.
Yes.
I think I've seen things before on like serial, like when talking about serial killers and that, or even just true crime, where, and this is I think true, where it's of course a knife. If someone is stabbing someone, it's a crime of passion because
Right.
you're doing it at such a close proximity, and I think there's something to be said about that. But I think equating it to something phallic is maybe a stretch.
I think that's a stretch.
Yeah.
We don't have to see penises everywhere.
Exactly.
But they really, the commentary really plays into that in a way that made me a little uneasy. And even Tony Todd calls it a love story. He talks about seducing Helen.
Okay.
It's very strange.
I kind of get it though, because like if I was married to who Helen is married to, and this man with gorgeous fashion sense and a beautiful voice, and I like bees, I like honey.
Sweet to the sweet.
Sweet to the sweet. Catch more flies with honey.
That's true.
Yep.
Yes.
So like I kind of get it, and I think if you want to get like really deep about it, you could argue that she's being lured by this like unknown, by she's a grad student, she's in search of knowledge. You can kind of look at it that way.
I just see her as like, my marriage is boring, I'm
Yeah.
gonna devote myself to my work.
Yes. Yeah, that's a
I
good way
don't
to put
see
it.
a romantic reciprocation.
Yeah,
with
like I don't think
her
she's
and
actually like attracted to him in a very physical sense,
Right.
or a romantic sense. Yeah,
And I think they could have done this without that. Like,
I
it
think
could
so,
have been the same story without him needing, again, being horny for the white lady.
yes.
So
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of the commentary that we were reading earlier comes from as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because I think the movie's very interesting in that while it doesn't maybe acknowledge her white saviorism,
Yes.
she does die.
Yes.
Like she gets punished
Yeah.
for this by the fates of the film.
Right, and she dies saving a black baby.
Yes.
Yeah. So
She has to, I can't think of a less cliche way of saying it, but put her money where her mouth is. It's like, you want to come in and save black people?
Right.
Like, all right, you're going to do it.
Yeah, she's
You're
putting
gonna-
in the work. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's just that their talk on the commentary was weird about that.
Okay.
And this is, if you listen to our last episode about the boy, this is our second one where the guy and the haunt are the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And these are the only ones we've talked about so far.
Right.
But I do find that interesting.
I do too. Yeah. I mean, I think it's. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Like thinking of like Crimson Peak. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense he's not the haunt, but actually, I guess if you haven't listened to Crimson Peak yet, please do, because I was gonna say he does become the haunt at the end.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but I'm very surprised it doesn't happen more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually the guy is the gateway into
Yes.
into it.
Right.
Instead of being both gateway and
Haunting.
yeah. And the house, well, not the house, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the house is, again, it's this it's real life, Cabrini Green. On the commentary, Virginia Madsen says that our modern day haunted house is the housing project, because it's where so-called self-described respectable people are scared of.
Yes.
They don't
Yeah.
want to walk past it.
I can see that.
You don't want to go in there.
Right.
So I thought that was a really astute observation. And as I said, they actually filmed there in 1992 with the exterior shots. They had to have like bodyguards with them.
Wow.
And just for protection, they had
Yeah.
no idea, because there was a lot of crime there.
Yeah.
And it was very poorly cared for.
Yeah.
I read that one of the more startling statistics I read is how the rotting garbage piled up in the trash chutes, and at one point it was piled up to the 15th floor.
Wow.
I just can't even imagine that.
Wow.
So this place was literally rotting from the inside.
Yeah.
And it was torn down in 2011.
Yeah.
There is, I don't think you've seen it, the PJs. They turned this into a comedy.
Yeah. Good old fashioned time.
It's
Yeah.
a sitcom with Eddie Murphy, and it's kind of claymation animation. Very funny. Check that out if you need a laugh.
Yeah.
For a break from Candyman. Bonus Gothic. Our bonus Gothics usually include romantic rivals, incest, pananos.
Yep.
score by former Radiohead band members. We do have a great score in this, though, by Philip Glass, who's a classical composer.
Yes,
The Candyman score is fantastic.
It is really good.
It's really good.
It fits it very well.
He's had a very eclectic film scoring career, because I do believe he got his start in like classical music.
Yeah.
And then he did Candyman, which is very interesting. And I'm trying to find some of the other ones that he did. I forgot to write them down.
I also read something about how this might have been on Letterboxd, so if you commented on this, I apologize, I'm stealing your thought. He does this like type of composing where he uses a lot of like silence. He uses a lot of like quiet bits, and I think they used like a term, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was something like quiet composition or something like that. Yeah.
It's very good. It really sets the mood. He also did The Hours with Nicole Kidman.
Oh, she plays Virginia Woolf, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, old Ginny Wolf coming back.
Little drowner.
Yeah.
We talked about her in the last episode. He did The Illusionist, which is the one that's not The Prestige.
Yes.
And he did Candyman 2.
Oh.
And Notes on a Scandal.
Oh, interesting.
So he has an interesting eclectic score, but the score is very good.
It's really good.
Listen to that if you haven't already. But so Romantic Rival is an interesting one with this, because we could have Guy, Haunt, and Romantic Rival all be the same, because she is already married.
Yeah.
And so the Candyman being the romantic rival, I feel like is what the director wants.
Yes.
He puts a lot onto her character as being her almost being entirely driven by her being in this unhappy marriage.
Yeah.
Which seems like a very masculine way of viewing it.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry, she could have other motivations than being unsatisfied in marriage.
Right.
And Virginia Madsen, I mean, she never comments on that, but they're also not in the same room with this commentary. But yeah, he kind of makes that her whole character, is that she's unhappy with her marriage and like looking for love in all the wrong places.
Right, yeah.
I don't buy into that.
I don't see that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add to our Gothic categories?
Do you think so? The painting of like the Helen, like the old timey Helen, she had curly hair.
Oh.
Do you think that this movie would have been? Do you think any of this would have happened if Virginia Madsen didn't have a perm?
That's a good question.
Do you think it was just the face? Do you think the hair added to it?
The hair definitely added to it.
Yeah. I wonder if she just skipped a salon visit.
Yeah.
If none of this would have happened.
Right? If she wasn't as sexy.
If this wasn't 1992 and everyone had to have curly hair.
Right.
If she had just pulled out the hair straightener.
Yes.
I think we could have avoided a lot. I don't want to blame the woman victim, but I am blaming the woman victim right now.
Yeah. Or her salon.
Or her salon.
Her stylist.
Yeah. Put down the curlers.
Yes.
We have to stop.
That's true.
A baby is going to die if you don't put down those curlers.
Where does she find the time?
Seriously, her hair is always so beautiful.
Especially if the movie is like takes place over the course of like 9 months.
She breaks out of the hospital and she has like gorgeously coiffed hair. Coiffed, is that how you say it? Coiffed. I think I've only ever read it. Coiffed. Yes. Yeah. I always say Sigu when I'm reading. Because I never see the word segue. Yeah. Sigu.
Sigu is what I always say.
Yeah.
Well, let's segue into, is it Gothic? What do you think?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. I personally would maybe put it more in goth-ish.
Okay.
But I could see the argument for Gothic. Yeah. I think it's a very interesting sort of take on the Gothic house. I think that's where I waver the most, just because I wish they had shown it a little bit more.
That's true.
I do feel like a lot of the movie takes place outside of Cabrini Green, actually.
That's a very good point.
It's something, I think people remember it because of Cabrini Green, but I really don't think it's actually on screen that much.
No, she goes at the beginning to visit Anne-Marie, and then, she's out of it for most of it until the very end.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's where I kind of waver, I feel like. Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I think all the elements are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been nicer if she was in the so-called house more.
Yes.
So yeah, Gothish.
Yeah.
Candyman Gothish, but a very strong American Gothish.
Yes. I think it leans more on the Gothic side, but I would still put it in Gothish.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it. Thank you for listening to us break down Candyman. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are now on Apple Podcasts, so rate and review us there. You can drop us an email at sogothicpod@gmail.com with comments and suggestions for future films. And follow us on Instagram for hints about what we'll discuss next. All right, stay ghosty, everybody. Boo-bye.
Bye.